All right. Yeah, but there really are people out there who don't corner their bowls. And I've been getting, you've been there for it too. I mean, we do basically everything together. We've been getting roasted for it.
Yeah.
For being efficient, that is. Here's the thing. Corner green tastes exactly the same as center green.
Yeah.
However, when you get corner green, there's lots of corner green to go around.
Correct.
It's only one center green. You're a selfish motherfucker if you don't corner your bowls.
Every other hit is ashy after that if you do that. Think of who else you're smoking with.
Welcome to the third episode of Chicken and Rice for the Soul. This week, we have topics somewhere. I wrote some topics down earlier, but honestly, I haven't seen you that much since...
This morning.
Well, we work out together every day.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't see you that much.
Yeah.
I guess that's a good bit of the day. But what have you been up to, man?
Today was really interesting. But before I get to that, I would just like to say to, no one out there that is watching who also does not care, but I'll say it anyway. Yesterday, my father had his 60th birthday, and they came up and celebrated. Big man made it to the 6-0. Congratulations.
6-0, Randy.
Yeah.
What a legend. Can we talk about his softball career quick?
Yeah. So he was a very avid county league softball player in my hometown, Lewis County, and he played for 40 years, I think.
Holy shit.
Just about.
That's double what you and I have done, literally anything. Like walking.
Be alive.
Yeah. Double.
Basically, yeah. Yeah, that was always a big passion because he tried to make it into the MLB and was how close you would consider him getting there.
Up for debate.
Up for debate.
Jury's out.
He went to a tryout for the Cincinnati Reds, and he made it to the final cut, but he was part of the final cut. So if he would have got to move on, I'm assuming it was he would have had to start at the bottom and go to the single A team first. So, I mean, if you take into factor the different levels of minor league ball, how close was he to getting to the majors? Well, I suppose not that close.
Not as close as he was to making it to 60. Because he just made it.
Yeah.
That man has had so many heart issues that it's impeccable.
He does have 2 stints in his heart. He did have a heart attack about 2 years ago.
Wow, yeah, I remember that. He was all like, oh, my heart.
Yeah, yeah, just
out of nowhere.
One day he was just in bed,
Snap.
had huge chest pains, could hardly breathe, and decided to go to the hospital. Found out, he had a blockage, and he was having a heart attack.
Yeah, big old heart attack. The big payback, as James Brown
He
would say.
thought he was going to die at 45.
I know individuals who think that too. We are really just trying to follow in your father's footsteps.
Well, see, my grandfather died at the age of 45, so that's why my father thought he was going to die at 45.
So anything over 45 is candy for him.
Yeah, like I remember it vividly because I was only 7 years old when he was 45. Yeah,
Damn.
Yeah, so I remember
you and I could have had a much more similar backstory if his predictions were true.
Yeah, maybe we would have met at Snowball or something like that.
Well, your dad was in the military.
He was not in the military.
Yeah, so you wouldn't have gotten that.
Hey, no, the government would be like, we don't care. We'd be like, yeah.
Yeah, basically. I don't know. Well, it's not a government thing. It's a non-for-profit.
Oh, I thought
That's what Snowball Express is.
Oh.
It's a non-for-profit organization currently run by Gary Sinise. Lieutenant Dan, he bought it a couple of years back. So essentially what it is they give an all-expense-paid vacation to the families of fallen soldiers, the parents and children from the age of 5 all the way up to 18. Yeah, and it's an opportunity for the kids at the holidays to not be around.
So is it funded by the military?
No, it's privately funded.
Oh.
It's all privately funded.
Okay.
Yeah.
I assumed it was military funded because it was military kids.
The military doesn't fund anything for survivors basically, except the paycheck you get. But Snowball Express is an incredible thing, man. Like, all of these huge celebrities are there, and they're all just giving, like, tons of money to it. Like, Gary Sinise would just walk around with the kids with no security. He still does. One time, when it was still Buck Kern, he was the CEO of Neiman Marcus, and he stepped down to be the president of this non-for-profit for the families of fallen soldiers. That's a fucking man. Yeah. That's a man and a half. And he let us shove him in the overhead carrier of a plane because he's like 5'4". And the kids all picked him up and put him in the overhead carriage. What's up, buddy? Come on.
Oh, yes, is our other co-host.
It's our co-host. Cats on the table, one time only. Oh. That sucks. I really hope it's been picking up this whole time. We gotta move the microphone, ladies and gentlemen. Guys, gals, and non-binary pals, everyone in between. I hope all this picked up, but I don't know if you've been paying attention. We don't edit things around here, so this is all gonna stay in. One take, ladies and gentlemen, and guys and gals. One take here at Chicken and Rice for the Soul. I forgot to move the microphone over. So they may or may not have been able to hear anything we've been saying. It's a pretty good mic. It's probably just going to be pretty muffled for the beginning part. Cats on the table, one-time deal only. Look at you, being so good. He's normally not allowed on the table, but I generally don't stop him either way. But cats on the table, one-time deal. Yeah, this is our other co-host, Kittwin. And, we're just going to take this episode to explain kind of what we've done and who we've introduced. So Kittwin is my 12-year-old mutt of a cat that one time my mom just found and brought in the house because she was sad that her husband was dead and wanted cats. So he was my cat. And we would hang out and chill. I actually have family photos that my mom got taken where I brought Kittwin. Because there was a backyard and I just went inside and grabbed him. Because he's always been kind of a lazy little man. Just a little man hanging out. But there's this really interesting story I have about Kittwin where when I was a senior in high school, Kittwin decided it would be a good idea to run away for about 2 years. And I came home fall sophomore year and my mom said, "You're not going to believe this. Your cat is in your room." And I'm like, "Which one? Meatball? Yeah, he's chilling." And she's like, "Nah, Kittwin came home." And I went downstairs and it was Kittwin. And I guess what happened was he was in like a neighbor house or something. But what I like to think is that he lived an alter ego as a mob boss. That's why he's so mellow these days. He's like on a permanent hangover from all the coke he did with the mob.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, dude.
Kittwin kind of strikes me more as a crusader rather than a passive one.
Yeah. I don't know. In his old age, he is kind of just a hanging out little dude. But I do see that. Maybe he was like a Conan type character when he was younger. Conan the cat barbarian. Kittwin the cat barbarian. Yeah. Who would he fight, though? Neighborhood squirrels, obviously.
Birds.
Like, what would his
arch nemesis be?
Yeah, his big nemesis, arch nemesis.
Norm Macdonald as Pigeon.
And then the season finale, it's Norm Macdonald as Pigeon versus Kittwin. Man, what are you doing here, cat? Man, get out of here! And Kittwin just comes up and fucking slices him. Yeah. What type of weapon would he wield, though? He's a cat. Mm-hmm. So, like, are we assuming that he gets opposable hands and like thumbs?
Yeah, cats can have thumbs.
Okay.
He can have a little thumb.
Okay, so he can hold things then. Mm-hmm. Can we assume he's bipedal as well? So he's going to be standing up. So he's going to be standing.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's like a humanoid cat.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's not like Battle Cat from He-Man.
No.
Battle Cat's pretty sweet, dude.
Battle Cat.
It has a real name.
Yeah.
I don't know its name. It's Battle Cat, though. Yeah. Like, everyone who's not watching, y'all know who Battle Cat is, right? Y'all know Battle Cat. He's a cat. He battles. But Kittwin doesn't strike me as an armor guy. He'd just be rocking his fur.
Oh yeah.
Like, is he bipedal and rocking? What's his weapon? Like a circular glaive that he throws at people. Like a boomerang glaive. Maybe what's the one with the big fucking?
He doesn't need a weapon.
A halberd.
Stand.
He has a stand?
Yeah. Declado.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, probably. I mean, he's pretty sleepy right now. Hey, buddy. Yeah, but our first guest, we had that the other day. That was Alex, and wow, what a time. It's always a good time getting to see him, and he'll be back many a time on this archive.
For sure.
So he is a guy that we met through college, basically, and he's a guitar major, and oh my gosh, he is next level with the guitar.
Best I've ever seen in person.
Yeah, I would explain a genre, but he explains it as just finding the music, and it's really beautiful. It's really cool. He just does some super unique stuff. And yeah, get comfortable, buddy. Cats on the table during the podcast. Cats are allowed on the table during the podcast. You're welcome. But, yeah, it's really crazy to see him play. It's wild. He needs to bring that shit down here. Yes. Live in concert.
Eventually.
Yeah. So, we were going to go back to you bitching about your week. But we were talking about your dad. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about your dad?
Not right now.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We got to save some for later.
Yeah.
One more thing. Your dad used to, and still does, has one of the most powerful mustaches.
He does have a sick mo.
Time. When you get within like 30 feet of that mustache, you get a shudder of violation because of how powerful that mustache is. It's like, oh, there's a powerful mustache around here. I couldn't even keep mine. Do I really know what it's like to have a mustache that powerful when your father's mustache has transcended more time than you and I have been alive combined?
Yeah, he's had that mustache for like 40 years.
That's what I'm saying.
At that power level.
I had my mustache for like 8 months.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I had a big mustache. Powerful mustache. Your dad had a powerful mustache.
He was packing heat.
Facts, dude.
Yeah.
Hey, Kittwin's just taking himself for a lick.
Yeah.
So, what's going on, man? You want some more 7-Up, or would you like some Diet Coke?
I could switch to the Coke, yeah.
So, Aaron and I are trying to get #shredded, but I like to drink soda while we do this. So, we have Diet Coke and 0 sugar 7-Up to mimic the whiskey that we had last week. Because at the end of the day, everything we have is a prop here. Not sponsored by Coke, but I just love Diet Coke. I don't care if it's going to give me cancer. I don't care if it's going to make my eyes fucking fall out. I just care that it's going to help me keep my six-pack abs. So, about your week. What's going on, man?
Alright. So, there's this mutual friend you and I know.
Okay, we'll refer to her as Z.
Z, yeah. Alright, well, Z, you see, FaceTime me.
Z, you see.
FaceTime me in the middle of the day today and gave me another rant about how I shouldn't live with you.
That's really weird.
Yeah, so I finally, asked her, why she cares. It doesn't affect her at all, and she was just like, I'm just looking out for you. I'm just concerned and, worried about you. And, I didn't ask you to be.
Why is she worried that I'm living with you?
She's worried I'm not going to find anywhere to live. Because, I have to be down, I'm going to be down there for the fall, and you're not. So thinks I should just find a place for this year, and then move in with you next year somewhere. And I'm like, Gene, Z, I mean, sorry. Well, fuck. Happens.
Happens. I can't win them all. One take.
She'll find a way to...
One take.
Anyway,
Yeah. So, regardless, it's really weird because it's not that difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it's already like a 2-bedroom place.
She doesn't understand how much housing there is.
A lot.
Yeah.
Like, Binghamton's a big college, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but most of the people live on campus.
Yeah.
And there's like, 4 towns outside of Binghamton?
Yeah.
Within like a 5-minute drive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like Vestal, Endicott.
Mm.
They're like technically closer to the campus.
Yeah. So, if we just live in one of those, there's like infinite amounts of housing there.
Yeah.
In places that like, I did a little digging. I looked a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot. For like pretty cheap if you're willing to.
Where did you look?
Huh?
Where did you look?
Craigslist.
Oh. I used apartments.com. That's kind of sus.
Craigslist is all reliable.
I might have to look on there.
Because as much shit as people give Craigslist, it's if you're trying to buy like chickens, or if you're trying to like find an apartment or find an old dude to suck you off, like that's Craigslist's MO.
Mm-hmm.
You're only gonna use one of those because I don't need a chicken and I need an apartment, and I'll let you deduce the rest. So you only go there when you're looking for apartments.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's got good listings because most apartment places use an algorithm it just spits it everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And Craigslist is the one that nobody looks at ever. So it's like the 4chan of listings because it's just troll now.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do is just look at like weird Facebook and Craigslist listings. Like to just cruise through because we live in a pretty yee place. So there's a lot of whack stuff on there, man. There's a lot of wild stuff. Like looking for a fresh batch of chickens. That's not that wild, but there's some weird shit on there. Oh! This week, our addition to my knick-knack collection is this giant blue gem that on the inside, I don't know if you can see this. It has Washington, D.C. inside of the gem. Let's sit down. Washington, D.C. inside of the gem. So, it's actually just a big glass thing. And it's cool, but there's a really cool story behind this. Okay? So, when I was younger, one of my buddies, you know how when you're younger, your parents have friends, and you're like, oh, go play with their kids. So my mom went over to her friend's house, and I had this cool big fucking glass thing. And I was just hanging out upstairs with her kids. And one of the dudes took it, and I don't remember how, but he ended up putting it in his pants. And I hit him right in the fucking nuts. And it was in there, and he's like, fuck, my nuts. Yeah. And I went, and we just kept playing Wii Boxing, and he was complaining about his nuts the whole time. And I'm like, bro, if you wouldn't have put this piece of glass on your nuts, I wouldn't have had to try and get it back from you and hit you in the nuts to get my little glass thing back. Moral of the story, don't put glass on your nuts. Like, especially if it's someone else's glass.
Mm-hmm.
There's no circumstances where you should be taking my nice Washington, D.C. glass and putting it on your freaking nuts. So, now that this is on the podcast table, if there's a single guest that comes on and puts this on their nuts, I'm going to be furious. Or lack thereof nuts, any genitalia. I do not want this going on genitalia ever again. And I'm glad that it'll come to its final resting place at my podcast table. I don't care where the podcast table is going to go, where it's going to be, but it matches Ric Flair's outfit, and it will never, ever touch genitalia again. I'm really glad that it's there, though. It adds to the vibe. Should we keep with blue for the next one?
Yeah, that seems to be the vibe, yeah.
Should we go through and explain what each of the things are, other than the gem?
Yeah.
This is Ric Flair.
He's the greatest wrestler of all time. And this is his outfit. Oh, which WrestleMania was it at? I'm going to sound like such a fake fan because I don't remember. I don't even have my phone, so it doesn't matter. But I think it's like in the mid to late 20s. I think it's 27. I'm wrong. I guarantee I'm wrong. But he wore this in whatever match he did against Shawn Michaels, where Shawn Michaels kicks him in the mouth and he's like, I love you. I'm sorry. Kick! Sweet chin music to the face. And they're like, oh my god, it's so sad because 1, 2, 3, Ric Flair's retired for good, except for his stints that he did in TNA. And that time he came back to wrestle in WWE again. And now that he's Charlotte's manager, this guy just won't quit. He's built different. Ric Flair's the man. And this other thing is my participation trophy from the first men's physique show that I did. There was no one else in the teen division, so I got first place. They don't ask how, they ask how many. And that's why I lean Ric Flair on it, because it's just a participation trophy. However, I have an opportunity to get a real trophy to put there in 16 weeks. As of the recording of this podcast. When is this going up? Next Thursday?
Realistically.
Okay, so about 6. I'll be closer to 15 weeks by then. But I am competing in the Vermont NPC championships, which is really exciting for me. I'm probably not going to talk much about fitness on this podcast, realistically. But my main focus is strength, conditioning, fitness, and education of people to that. You know, I like to get the information out there. Mm-hmm. That's what I really like, man. I like seeing how I can change people's lives by just talking about what I like to do.
Yeah, that really does it for me, too, in my work.
Yeah, it's like I'm just talking to you about what I like. I'm just talking about fitness.
Some whack shit happened with that today, though.
Oh?
I had my supervision meeting.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And my supervisor told me that I knew nothing about poverty. Yeah.
So what was his reasoning?
We were in a discussion about... first it started with basic needs. And then he asked me, like, what was defined as basic needs, because I was telling him to study about happiness, like I was telling you about earlier. And the basic needs defined in the study were, the essential things to live. Food, water, shelter, basically.
Yeah.
So the first thing was he was trying to tell me that is that just basic needs? Like he was making the argument that healthcare and mental health should be included as basic needs.
Are you giving me time to interject?
Yeah, you can interject.
Okay. I didn't know if you were gonna... Okay. I see his argument, but I disagree.
That's kind of the boat I'm in, and
I don't strongly disagree, though.
Yeah, I don't strongly
it's a very loose disagree. Yeah. Everyone, in my opinion, should have access to health care and mental health care. However, I do not see that as a basic need.
Yeah, well, I explained it to him. I was like, when you think about it like Maslow's pyramid hierarchy of needs, those things would not be on the bottom. They would not be in the basic needs level.
They would be the
secondary.
next, yeah.
Yeah.
You can only have access to those as needs if you're capable of being in a society where they're a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I betcha if you went back to the 1600s, they would be substantially less concerned about their health care and more concerned about food, shelter, water.
Mm-hmm.
So, I understand that in a modern society, those could be deemed as needs, but I don't think is describing it as a basic need is completely transparent.
Well,
I think it's...
straw man argument. He's very good at those.
Yes. And the thing is when you bring those... When you say that they're stating a logical fallacy, they say you're hating them.
Yeah, that's interesting because I remember one time having a conversation with him where we talked about slippery slopes,
Yeah.
and that's kind of like the basis of his whole philosophy, which is interesting because slippery slopes is a logical fallacy in strawman argument.
So it's kind of like the flat Earth stuff. Have you heard about that? All these flat earthers keep quoting this study. I don't remember what it is, but there's one study that they quote. And they're like, look it up, man. It proves the Earth is flat. And what it says is that the experiment that was done to prove that the Earth was flat, that the Earth was flat and not spinning, has never been recreated before by any other scientist. And in the initial experiment, the results that were needed to prove that it was flat weren't gotten. And the hypothesis was rejected, yet they published it as like a true claim. And they're like, look it up, man. So it's the same thing. They're like, this proves that my way of thinking is correct. Where it's an example of saying that you shouldn't use that as your way of thinking. It's a very roundabout way of doing things, but, you know, fact-checking's for losers. I just want to say things.
Mm-hmm. And then furthermore, when we got to the talk of poverty, you know, I brought up, you know, he asked me how many people in America do I think are living in poverty, and my answer was, you know, very statistical. I just cited that, you know, currently the poverty line in America says that I think it's 15.8%, I think is the percentage, but 15.8% of America's population is currently living under the poverty line. So that's what I cited to him, and he basically told me that that statistic is a bunch of bullshit, and I don't know what I'm talking about, and I need to do research on the poverty thing.
I know there's been a big push to keep raising how much poverty is considered. I don't know, I'm not super informed on any of this, but I do know that I know a lot of people that statistically fall below the poverty line with very nice things.
Mm-hmm.
Like nicer than I can afford.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty cheap, though. I'm a pretty cheap guy.
Well, I mean, you gotta be. It's all about living within your means.
But I just don't want things.
Yeah.
Like, there are things that I want, and they're, like, silly. You know? But at the same time, man, growing up in yee bumfuck nowhere, sure, it's not the same as poverty in the city, but it's different to a different extreme.
I actually had to do a presentation on rural poverty.
It's really bad.
Yeah, I touched on how it's kind of a hidden issue. People don't talk about it.
How the country folk are dying.
Yeah, the poverty rate in rural areas is actually above the national average.
Yeah, by a lot.
A few percent, yeah.
70 bazillion.
Not quite.
So,
You
know, the derivative are both the same.
Yeah. So yeah, it was interesting because for the beginning of that presentation, I actually brought up the actual, I used Merriam-Webster as my dictionary, but the dictionary definition of poverty, and it's interesting because in that definition it describes someone who is lacking an acceptable or socially acceptable level of money and or I think it's some type of wealth, I think. But yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people, when they do think of poverty, they, would cite the statistic like I did and think that it's just cut and dry and like that. I mean, there is more to it, so I do see his argument. It's just the way he was presenting it was not appropriate.
Yeah, it's incredibly inappropriate for your field advisor to say you know nothing about that when he's consistently incorrect about things he brings up.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think it's showing a little something called indoctrination. And two, showing just how unqualified a lot of these people are to teach. I understand that a lot of the times the people who you're being taught by are not people who excelled in the field. Especially at the level that we can afford. You know, we're not dealing... Is he okay? He's just vibing. Oh, killing me out, and, you know, he's a pretty quiet cat. But, you know, I know that one of the funny things about ROTC is the people who get stationed at the detachment are generally the people at the bottom of their field or about to retire. And it's the same thing with colleges, generally. Like, for example, you either get super lucky. I've gotten really lucky with a lot of my professors. They're all people who super excelled in the field and then are about to retire. Or in Tanya's case, are just doing both. Or in Wilmot's case, just doing literally everything possible at exactly the same time. And I don't know how he does it. That man is so efficient. But I've also had a lot of professors who straight up did not know what they were teaching. And there was one time a professor was reading off of the slides and mispronounced a word and then had to Google it to figure out how to pronounce it. And she was lecturing on this topic. And that was the main name of the topic. And I'm not going to say what the topic was because it'll make it incredibly obvious. But that entire department is just completely gone to shit. And yeah, and I'm not saying I would have liked that major anymore if I would have stayed in it, if the professors were better. But I'm saying I probably would have had a better grasp of what was going on. Yeah. Only people like Chris excel in that because Chris is a robot.
He is, yeah.
Yeah. Dude, watching that guy study is nuts. He can just sit down and go. And he just won't stop. Like, that's a dangerous thing. It's terrible. He only puts... It's terrible that he only puts it towards studying.
Yep. Only studying.
Only studying. So, your field advisor is being a prick. I'm going to talk about how great my advisor is for a second. Tanya's the bomb. And she was all like, oh yeah, you need to take these courses and you're going to do your intro trip there. Done. I'm like, sick. And she's always like, how's your weightlifting going? When are you competing next? Just shooting the shit, you know? It's cool. You know, coming from a different department in the STEM field and moving towards a physical science, like exercise science in this case for me, it's really interesting to see how much the dynamic changes. They're so much more welcoming, where in the STEM fields you are looked at as what can you provide them, where in the STEM fields they just want bodies in the chairs, because at the end of the day anyone can be good at math and science. You just have to be willing to give up everything else. You can. Anyone can. But when you're in a more smaller niche field, exercise science is a niche field, you know? It's more welcoming because they understand it is just a passion project. Your field, psych, is right in the middle of that because it's a huge field. But if you get in the right places, it's a passion project.
That is correct.
Yeah. So how do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, there's definitely a lot of, like, legitimate science that goes into it. You know, it's not all just a bunch of BS like some people out there think.
Like me.
Yeah, there's definitely aspects to it that are out there, not very backed by anything, really. But
the only concrete one I've heard is Freud.
He did a lot for the field. He was a pioneer.
Paving the way for recording, we'll say, artists for years to come. It's one of the most popular tabs on that website. Categories, dare I say. So continue about how do you feel about Binghamton being receptive towards how you're feeling in the field?
Like, do you mean, do I feel like they are receptive or not? Or?
To anything that you're saying.
It depends.
Continue, man.
That was good. Yeah, anyway.
It's not good for you.
Like, the other day, I received multiple emails about the verdict of the Derek Chauvin trial.
Correct, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You just dated this podcast.
Yeah.
Might as well read off the Powerball numbers for today. Continue.
And it was just interesting because it's just weird to see like a nation celebrate someone going to jail. I don't know.
I get why they're celebrating though as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, don't get me wrong. Man should go to jail.
He should.
Yeah.
Yes. And it is awful what he did, and there's no excusing any of that. However, I don't understand how a country can get so behind. Not necessarily, like, that's a very negative thing. If you take away what, I don't know. I try not to sympathize with people like that, but it's a tricky thing, you know? Because you're like, oof, that sucks. Just kill him. Like, just hit him with the chair. Because it's going to take up a lot of tax dollars to keep him in there. And you know good old boy system is going to happen, regardless of what he did. Because there's some deranged lunatics that work in that system, which we need to get out. But you and I, we don't have any position to talk about that. However, yeah, it's very odd to see people celebrating that. It's like, you got to look at it this way, though. Everyone has been locked in their houses. So for them, this trial has been their form of media. CNN and whatnot have been talking about it. So, when you get the big climax, we're just in this season of Earth, man. That's the final boss fight of this season of Earth. Of course you're going to be fucking happy when the boss dies. Of course you are! Everybody wants to be celebrating because the boss fight's over for that one. That was a big victory for them. For us, for everyone. Because it shows that we're working towards reform. So, I don't know if they're necessarily celebrating that he's going to jail, or more celebrating the fact that this is a big step towards reform. Because he got guilty on all accounts. They're like, hit this guy with the book. So, it's a huge step in the right direction.
I certainly hope so.
I hope so too, because one of my favorite people, Coach Nathan Laro, that guy's insane, and he's a state trooper. You know? Guy's nuts. I can't tell that story. He still works as a trooper. Okay, so one of the coolest things about him is he is a 4-time All-American in diving and a national champion NCAA D3? Yeah. And, dude, he just has so many stories. So many stories about going around and traveling with diving. And
he also has a great video of him scalping himself.
Basically, there's a video of him somewhere on YouTube. You can check the bar. Up there. See him doing the YouTube thing. Right up there. Up there. That's where the search bar is. And type in Nathan Laro diving, and I'm pretty sure there's somewhere a video of him like lighting himself on fire and jumping off of this pole into the water. I'm pretty sure I showed it to you too.
Like 100 feet.
Yeah, it's a really big platform, and he just jumps into this like tiny little pool. There's also a video of him hitting his head against his heel against the back of the board. He just smacks his heel on the board. And yeah, Nate's a pretty hardcore guy. I remember the first time we went to go have like a diving dinner at his house.
Mm-hmm.
He forgot to take his like little fountain in the middle. You coming up or what? Okay. He had like this little fountain thing in the middle of his island in his kitchen, and it was just handles of Jack on like spouts. So you could like turn it and it would just shoot out. like one of the watering containers that you would have at like a football game.
Oh.
Except it was Jack Daniels. And it was just 3 bottles of Jack in these like spouts.
Yes.
And they spun, and it was the 2 of them weren't handles. The JD was the handle, and then he had Jack. Two other. I don't drink Jack.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. He had lots of different types of Jack Daniels though.
Mm-hmm.
And he, at the time, one of our teammates was vegan, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I spent all this time making this fucking," because we FaceTimed her because she didn't come. So I made all this vegan fucking food.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next time she came, and he made all the vegan food again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One time we were gonna go there, and we were waiting for one of the divers, me and midget diver,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, she texted us like an hour after, and was like, "Oh yeah, I'm not gonna come."
That.
You know who it is too. Yeah.
She's not vegan.
No, Maddie was the vegan.
Mm.
Yeah, Maddie missed the first time, but went the second time. I missed the second time.
Oh,
So.
okay.
Yeah. But it's always a wild time going to Nate's. He has a pet pig.
Hmm.
Yeah, it just runs around his house.
Based.
Yeah, and he has like 2 dogs,
You ever like
a
paint
couple cats. Huh?
it? You ever paint it?
Probably. Nate's a pretty wild guy.
Put numbers on the side of it. Have it be a race car around the house.
Something Nate would do. He's told me some crazy stories,
I
man.
bet. Man.
There was one time that after he won nationals, all of the swimmers took a giant cardboard cutout of him from the diving board. He was on the diving board, and they played Pin the Speedo on the diver in the middle of Union. And like, people would come up and call him a cigarette or a bundle of sticks wrapped in twine. And they would just publicly berate him. And he's like, "Y'all are losers. I won nationals." And yeah, there was and that's something that's interesting. Within swimming and diving, people consider them the same sport, but there is a huge divide between swimmers and divers.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, swimmers do not consider divers part of the team. Yeah, and like when we win meets, a lot of the times, so diving gets a lot of points.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of points, man. And you know, when you lose the meet, it's the diver's fault. Like I lost diving once, and we were down by like 55 points going into diving. Even if I got first place on both boards, we would have lost.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I remember at the end of the meet, a couple of teammates coming up and saying, "You really fucking lost it for us in diving." And this is at the collegiate level. And I'm like, "Damn, Sonny." And it's like, I couldn't tell if they were just mad or like, because I suck at diving too. I don't know if they all knew that. Like, I was pushing ungodly amounts of weight and then going on the diving board. I wasn't trying to be good at diving. It were D3 dog shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know? But it's just really weird. And that's always been that way. High school level, collegiate level, every team we talk to, there's this huge divide. Yeah, you don't see that in track and field. "Oh, javelin throwers aren't real track athletes." You don't hear that.
Yeah.
But in swimming and diving, divers are looked at as like not members of the team. Yeah. And it gets really bad sometimes. Like some teams, it's really bad. They take separate buses and shit. But sometimes the coaches like push it on them. Like sometimes the diving coaches are such prima donnas.
Mm-hmm.
And divers, we are prima donnas. You know? We're the first lady of the pool. You know, pay attention. Yeah, see? Sticking his ass up here.
Everyone's a diver.
Kittwin was diving into his house last night, man. How long have we been going? 44 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, oh, I'm gonna set it up so there's gonna be like something here, probably,
Oh, all right.
and then the subscribe thing like over there. Okay, so let's do that. Check out last week's episode up here, and subscribe right over there, and tune in next week when we'll have our next guest. My boy.
To be determined.
No, it's gonna be Billy.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, he's
All
gonna be
right.
episode 4. We're doing it
Well,
Tuesday night, is when we're
Spoilers.
recording it.
All right.
Nobody's gotten this far.
That's all right.
Nobody's watched this far.
That's also fine.
Yeah. So tune in next week on the next exciting episode of Chicken and Rice for the Soul. We do this in one take, and I can't find the mouse.
All right.